What's going to drive you, right, when you have the contract, when you get drafted in the first round? Okay, that's behind you now. What's going to drive you? What's going to sustain you through a season where we hit a little adversity?
All right, so that's DeMeco Ryans on Texans Radio at the Combine. He's still there right now, and they're obviously very busy with all of that. And there are a couple things that DeMeco talked about in that interview that really intrigued me, specifically when he talked about motivating his players and also what does he get out of meeting with players at the Combine. Thanks to BetUS for sponsoring the video. And I think when he talks about finding your why, it's important to know that a lot of that, there was a book called Find Your Why by this guy, Simon Sinek, that ran rampant through NFL coaching ranks a few years ago. And it's good stuff. I read it, and it's all about understanding your why. What's your fundamental reason for doing what you do, understanding the driving force behind why you want to be great at football or anything else. And for DeMeco, I think there's two parts. One, there's a diagnostic part, and two, there's a motivational part. He's trying to figure some things out about these guys when he's talking to them, but also, all right, if one of these guys do end up on my team, how do I motivate them? How do I get them to follow their why? And it's really cool because I think DeMeco, above his defensive mind and his football mind, his rapport with players and his ability to connect to players is probably ultimately going to be one of his biggest strengths, because there's some guys that are good motivators but don't necessarily do, I think, all that special on the X's and O's side. DeMeco is a really good motivator, but he's also exceptionally good at the defensive coordinating side of the job. BetUS brought this, sponsors the video, and they have a casino now. So if you're a slots enthusiast, BetUS has the games to raise your pulse. You can test your skills with timeless classics, explore the newest, hottest slots, and feel all of that casino buzz. They've got live dealers. Sign up now, get a 200% sign-up bonus up to $5,000 and 250% crypto sign-up bonus up to $5,000 as well. Here's the full answer with DeMeco, with John Harris, and Mark Vandermeer on Texans Radio. I've got a link to the full interview down below on finding a player's why and why it's important.
Detail, and that why speaks to me a little bit more, because you can hear a guy, whether he's doing it for his family, or whether he wants to do it because he wants to be truly great at football. I don't think a lot of guys are chasing money anymore with the NIL deals. These guys have a little change in their pockets now. So, but for me, and I can always draw back to that, because what's going to drive you, right, when you have the contract, when you get drafted in the first round, okay, that's behind you now. What's going to drive you? What's going to sustain you through a season where we hit a little adversity? What's the reason behind why you're doing what you do? Because you all know we play a tough sport, and there are going to be a lot of tough moments. So what are you going to lean on to push you through when you hit those difficult patches? And that's where the reason of what's your why and what's pushing you. And if I have to, I can always go back and remind a guy of his why and remind him of why he's doing what he's doing. That serves as a motivation tactic for me later whenever I need it.
Yeah, you can remind him, hey, I thought you said you loved your mama, huh? Is this what you're doing for your mama right now, or your kids? Michael Irvin told a really good story once when we had him on with Meltzer back in the day that I'll share, that's kind of related to all this in a little bit. As far as the money goes, I was actually a little bit surprised when DeMeco said he thinks it's rare these days, or that you don't see guys that are necessarily motivated by money. Because, all right, let's be honest, the vast majority of us are motivated by money to some degree. It's like DeMeco's not working for free. The question is, as DeMeco pointed out, once you have that money, if money's the only thing that's driving you, and if you've never made a lot of money before in your life, and you don't come from a family that has a lot of money, or just very meager circumstances, when all of a sudden, whether you're a seventh round pick or a first round pick, these days the rookie minimum salary is pushing $1 million. It's FU money right off the bat, and you gotta try to figure out if the guys you're drafting are going to be so satiated by that big purse right there at the beginning that they lose their motivation until it's time for the next contract. And we've all seen the various Albert Haynesworths of the world, the guys that have a great contract year and then never do quite the same thing again. And now with the first round money being as large as it is, you've got to be absolutely as positive as possible. You've got a guy that's motivated by something far greater than just the money, because you're going to get the money. So you got to have something driving you beyond that. I thought it was interesting that he said NIL has been good, because obviously the guys aren't making as much money in NIL as they will in the NFL. But I think that you get a good sense for how well they handled it. And if a kid gets a multi-million-dollar NIL deal out of high school and handles it really well as an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, that's a really positive sign. I mean, then you've got a kid that's either driven by greatness, driven by love for his teammates, love for his family, whatever it might be. The flip side of it is, man, there's going to be some 18-year-old kids that get that money and it is demotivating for them. Then it doesn't mean that they can't mature and grow beyond that, but you got to go digging a little bit harder. I mean, probably the best story that CJ put out there last year was when he was on the pivot, and he had said that at one point he told his NIL guys, Brian Burney and Mulligetta, those guys were representing him on the money side of things, just to pull back a little bit on the NIL stuff because he was getting distracted. Coaches and management, they love to hear that. And ideally you hear it from coaches and teammates as well, as DeMeco alluded to. A lot of this stuff, lots of guys know how to put their best foot forward in meetings, but when you start hearing from the equipment guys, you start hearing from the secretary at the office that, oh my gosh, Will Anderson is just such a great guy. And you know the way Will Anderson operates, the way Will talk about how important it is to care about everybody in the organization. You can imagine that, as we heard, pretty much everybody at Alabama had great things to say about Will Anderson. Michael Irvin's story was really cool. Michael Irvin, who a lot of people would tell you was such a driving force for those Cowboys Super Bowl teams, not just because of his play on the field, but one of the reasons that he was such a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame, even though his numbers weren't as great as a lot of other wide receivers, was that John McClain told us all his teammates and coaches said that this guy really just knew how to tweak his teammates. And Michael Irvin told Mike Meltzer and I a story once about a young wide receiver, that just wasn't getting it. You could tell he just didn't have that edge. He needed something different. And Michael Irvin drove the guy home one day and saw him with his family, and he had a little 2 or 3 year old daughter. And just in talking with him in the car and seeing him interact with his daughter, he could tell, like, okay, I didn't think this guy cared about anything, but man, this guy is committed to his daughter, and she is his entire world. So Michael Irvin, who probably had a different interpersonal style than DeMeco Ryans, he knew that he could remind that player of what he was doing it for. His why was his little 2-year-old girl and how he wanted to provide for her. So DeMeco, I think, he gets that part of it. It's really cool. As far as the combine goes, the DT was really disappointing this combine. That's good. By the way, Brandon, I haven't dug into the workouts yet because we were at Astros training or spring training this entire last week. I like the guys that test poorly but play like demons on the field. The kid from Michigan there, Kenneth Grant, that I like so much, he's not working out because he has a strained hammy. So he will work out at his pro day. I think he's going to get vaulted up above number 25. But I'll do some more of the combine stuff this week. Spring training was busy, man. We did our show in the morning, and then we would go to a game, and then we would, and then I had obligations, mostly just drinking and eating with Sean and our boss Parker Hillis and Adam Spillane. But it's a team. I'm a team player, damn it. My why, in a lot of ways, the thing that worked the best for me was a fear of letting my teammates down, and I was always terrified of letting my teammates down. Whenever I discovered this, I think when I was captain of my junior high wrestling team was the first time I realized, oh wow. When you're leading the calisthenics, it's amazing how much easier the calisthenics are when you're the guy that has to set a good example for everybody. And I think ultimately, this is what I worry about with some of these guys in interview settings. There's a lot of guys out there that haven't necessarily discovered their why, and they don't know what it is. And I think DeMeco enjoys maybe being able to pull that out of guys. But when you're trying to diagnose and figure out, all right, what makes this guy tick? Yeah, like we're constantly as human beings trying to figure out what makes ourselves tick. But just a good little feel-good moment for me watching DeMeco and the way he ticks as a leader of the team. As we all know, I think he's an incredible leader. Just got to hope that Nick Caley is the right guy to be offensive coordinator. Thanks again to BetUS for sponsoring the video. Like, subscribe. We'll have more draft content coming up in the next couple of months, and obviously free agency gets started real soon.